please say hello to Damien. Hi there, Damien. Good to see you tonight.
Good afternoon. Nice and warm down in Cheshire. I hope it's the same for you up in the Central Belt.
It has. It's been a lovely day. I'm glad to say the sun's shining on the righteous here. And have you been following this 50,000 people coming in? We've made the Guinness Book of Records for the fastest 50,000 people crossing the channel in the last 13 months. So that's something that we're quite good at, is letting people into the country who shouldn't really be here. One of Britain's finest achievements in the last couple of years, I think, after winning the Olympics.
Did you see the video on X that was circulating regarding what happens to the migrant boats?
Just remind us of that again.
Well, basically, there was a citizen journalist that actually viewed the boats in Dover, the dinghies, actually being shipped back over to France in a haulage container. And the haulage container was actually leased by the British government, i.e. the Home Office. So the boats are coming into Dover, the people are disembarking, and the dinghies that they came over in, they're not being destroyed, they're being sent back over to France. Now, hello, Debbie. And to me, I'm all for recycling, but this is taking the mic.
Recycling the rubber dinghies, exactly. Well, that's shocking if, in fact, I've no doubt that that's correct, but maybe unless there's some other reason for it.
I just think there's too many things. There's too many things that are. Hello, Anthony. There's too many things that are coincidental about it, and I've done a video on it earlier in the week. Basically, I also done a video on the hotels themselves because I'm of the view that if this was truly about a humanitarian effort, if this was truly about putting our best foot forward and being the best country in the world and allowing these poor, innocent, defenseless refugees in with open arms, then surely it would be done for free. It wouldn't be a business. These private hotel companies like the Britannia hotels all over the country that are making money hand over fist, well, if it was about humanitarian aid, they'd be doing it for free. In fact, the government would insist on it being done for free because it's all about commandeering the hotels, commandeering the resource, and doing it at cost. If not for free, then not making a profit on it. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to make a profit on a genuine humanitarian crisis. Surely, I mean that wouldn't be right. I mean, I'm speaking, with tongue in cheek here, but if it wasn't a business, this is the thing. The thing that was sold is not what's actually happening. All the money that's being made and all these little vested. Yeah, quite, Chris. Yeah, I agree with that one actually. My point is that if it was truly a genuine refugee emergency, then no human rights lawyers, no part of the cottage industry that's grown up around this asylum system would be making money because it's not about making money. All the lawyers would be doing it pro bono publico, surely, because why would anyone make any money off it? Because if you're humanitarian, you don't make money. It's all about doing the best for your fellow man, is it not, or fellow woman?
Well, that's an interesting point, and I think that reveals the hypocrisy behind a lot of it, especially with the lawyers, because they're raking it in. They have got endless clients. Every boat that's coming over the channel is just a whole new raft of clients for them.
Well, yeah,
it's
exactly.
Incredible.
I mean, it was last weekend this story broke. It was Morgan McSweeney, who's basically one of the higher ups in Downing Street. He was responsible for the speech that Keir Starmer wrote about the island of strangers. And he's very aware that Labour have lost the Red Wall in the next election. He's the one that was getting them to go with the pro-migrant rhetoric. However, his dad is in charge of asylum accommodation, and he's making a tidy profit on it as well. and the business that his dad owns is actually registered in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, for tax purposes, so they get even more money and pay less corporation tax. So it's all right, Labour saying we're smashing the gangs, we want to stop this system. That's the rhetoric. But behind the scenes, how many of their higher ups have got their fingers in the cookie jar? They're all implicated, in my view.
Yes, yes, that's a good point. Is to say follow the money, and once that money starts coming in, it's very difficult for the hotel owners, for the lawyers, for the NGOs who
Well,
get
even the well, even the
huge amounts.
well, even the private landlords that would normally rent their homes out to student accommodation for uni students or private tenants, they would rather take a 5-year contract from the government, whereas guaranteed income and any breakages or anything wrong with the property is going to be paid for when the clients move out. Now, back to my point earlier, if the government just went out into the public and started requisitioning or privately held accommodation, like hotels and these private flat complexes and whatnot, and said, right, you're not going to be paid for this, we're just taking it because we need it for the refugees, I've got a feeling this entire asylum system would collapse pretty much overnight.
I'd like to think so, and that might be coming because they're talking about wanting to stop the hotel accommodation as soon as possible, certainly by the next general election, but ideally before then. Well, if they're not going to stop the flow of people coming over, if they've got no effective strategy to do that, then where are they going to put these people?
Oh,
The
they'll be placed
only
directly into the community in HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy. That's exactly where they're going to go. So
exactly.
the headline is, "Oh, we've shut the hotels." People might look at that and go, "Oh, great, they've shut the hotels." The small print is, they're not being deported. They're going to remain in the country. They're still a danger to your women and children. It's just instead of having hotels with the security guards there's some level of segregation between the asylum seekers and the general population. That's not going to be there at all. They're just going to be there in the wild in your community, and we'll wash our hands of it. And
yes, yes.
I find what I do find that's interesting is, and I don't necessarily like the framing, but I like the fact that we're getting results on it. There's a lot of activists and campaigners that are now making it a safeguarding issue for women and children. And they're saying your policies of allowing infinity refugees into the United Kingdom without any vetting, because we don't know who they are, where they've come from, is making our women and children unsafe or less
Mhm,
safe than they were. Because if you look at the violence and essays, we'll call them for YouTube purposes, that are happening from the early 2000s. It was about 6,000 in England and Wales, and that shot up to nearly 70,000 in England and Wales. And that's, in my opinion, due to the mass migration policy, where we're importing people with vastly different values and culture sets to ours, on the hope and a prayer that they're going to assimilate and integrate into British life, and patently that's not true.
mhm.
So I sort of take issue with the fact that it has to be framed as a women and children issue, because it should just be, yeah, you're breaking into the country, you don't get to stay.
Mhm.
That's the end of the matter in my view.
Yeah.
However, if we're getting women and children out on the street like the pink ladies down in London, all dressed up, very, very distinct, so they can't be categorised as far right thugs, and they're saying this is a safeguarding issue for our women and children. Well, yes, it is, and it is getting results. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that it is very important to emphasize the safety element, because you and I and most normal people will say you shouldn't be breaking into the country, it should be illegal. However, if that's not cutting any ice with the powers that be, then you do have to look around at, well, what are the implications of people illegally breaking into the country? What are the implications of all these men of whom we know absolutely nothing? And then you realize, well, they are potentially, there is a potential danger there. And that's really why we called our new book Protect Our Country. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Good. We've sold. We've got a copy right there to you. Thanks. Well, I hope you'll enjoy that. But that's why we called it Protect Our Country, because this is an issue of security. And our safety and security of the British people. And we say in the very first line here, we say, quote, "The first duty of the government is to keep citizens safe and the country secure," close quote. That's not us saying it. That's literally the very first sentence which appears on the Home Office website. So is the Home Office really performing its quote unquote first duty to British citizens and our country to keep us safe and
that would
secure?
be
And
a
the answer
no.
is no, of course they're not.
They've prioritised their human rights cottage industry above and beyond the defence of the realm and the defence of the women. I'm going to even say men, because yes, women and children are more vulnerable, but men can be attacked as well. It's just that it's less likely. So it's a safeguarding issue for everyone in the country, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also a with the lefty liberals. I done a write up on this on my channel yesterday as well. There's a what's the phrase? Hypocrisy. That's the one. Essentially, they're very eager to say that all cultures are equal, everybody's equally valid. There is such a thing as a universal person. We all need to hold hands and sing Kumbaya because that's the best thing to do. Until the people that they're importing into the country break the law. As soon as they break the law, they'll turn around and say, well, we have to consider they weren't naturally raised in Western Europe. We have to consider that they may have different cultural norms where they come from. And they allow this in sentencing for mitigation, which is why you'll get people that have committed heinous crimes and they get a 12-month sentence and they're out in 6 months. Or they won't even get a prison sentence, a custodial sentence, or they get a suspended sentence because of all this mitigation. So it turns out that all cultures are equal, all people are equally valid, and there's no difference until Mr. Foreigner, Mr. Channel Migrants, Mr. Asylum Seeker who's not from Western Europe commits a crime. And then we have to consider their very specific cultural differences and how they may not know that attacking women is wrong, or they may not know that you can't just go up and grope women in public because there's an issue of consent. It's a strange hypocrisy. Now, either all cultures are equally valid or they're not, and I'm not taking it because to me it's very, very, very racist to treat somebody from outside of Western Europe differently to somebody inside of Western Europe, with the assumption that people from outside of Western Europe need to be treated like children because they're not as civilized as Western Europeans. I think that's deeply racist and problematic by the liberal left's very, very own criteria. Wouldn't you say, Alistair?
Oh yeah, 100%. I really like that point that you made there, which isn't one I had really thought about, but it just speaks to the fact that endless excuses will be made. If you haven't got, if you don't like that excuse, we've got other excuses for them, sort of thing.
It's like there was one down in, there was a Nigerian and he wasn't even sent to prison because of his difficult background. He wasn't, and he assaulted a woman, and he wasn't even, and he wasn't even given a prison sentence. He was given a suspended sentence. Now, to me, he should be on the first plane back to Nigeria.
Well, absolutely, and I wonder if maybe he is going to be, because that we'll just put up a picture here of a tweet that was sent by the Secretary of Justice yesterday, and we'll just read it out. Let's fire it up here. There we go. Shabana Mahmood. I am clear. Foreign criminals must be deported, never to return. And she's got some words here. When foreign nationals commit a serious crime, the appropriate punishment is clear to me. They must be sent packing. By failing to live up to their responsibilities, they must lose their right to call our country their home. They must be deported, never to return. Shabana Mahmood, Lord Chancellor, Secretary of State for Justice. Now, crying out loud, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's great rhetoric, and I think it's to be applauded. And we retweeted that. Indeed, and credit where credit is due. Now, of course, whether Labour will do a thing about that remains to be seen. But we cannot discount that powerful rhetoric. I mean, talking about sending people packing. I mean, a few years ago, if you had said that, people would go, "Whoa, what are you, a
Oh,
member of some strange fringe party?" You know, but that's the Lord Chancellor saying that. So even if she may not do very much with that, what that does is it brings those words into reality and it makes everybody else emboldened to say the same thing. And that's how policies can eventually change. And of course, we know she's only saying that because her party is being threatened by, well, let's be frank, it's by the Reform Party that's saying those things, and she doesn't want to lose votes. But whatever the reasons may be, at least she's saying the right things that you and I have been saying for years.
She is. However, we have to caveat that. And the caveats that I would have is that her party, as we know, Keir Starmer, Lord Turner, who's the Attorney General for England and Wales, and Sadiq Khan are all human rights lawyers. So this is their bread and butter. So it's very interesting because I don't know if you remember when Boris was Prime Minister, he tried to get a flight off the ground of dangerous foreign criminals. And basically, it got grounded at the last minute, and some of them were serious offenders from Jamaica and other Commonwealth countries. And it got grounded at the last second, and it was on the basis of human rights interventions. And two of the signatories were Keir Starmer and Diane Abbott. So it seems like the behaviour can be different if you're in opposition to when you're in power. And that's what you need to watch. Like the Tories have been very strong at the moment on immigration rhetoric. Well, that's fine. Well, they're in opposition. They're not in a position to affect anything. So that's why the
Yes,
rhetoric is so strong.
true.
That's just my opinion. I'm a bit cynical. I'm done with the Uni Party, Alistair. I'm done with the Tories, and I'm done with the Labour Party. At this point, they can say we're not going to let a single immigrant back into the country, and it's not going to be net zero migration. It's going to be negative migration. They could say that. Well, until that's translated into actual action, then I'm not really buying it. I mean, the rhetoric's nice. If anything else, it gives us more leeway to what we can and can't say ourselves.
Mhm.
We can galvanise support on a local and national level. Those are all positives. However, I'd like action as well.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Unless we actually see serious action in that regard, then it is just rhetoric. And I'm not holding my breath for any serious action because, as I've always said, and as we say in our book, I mean, to actually stop this channel traffic will require a complete overhaul of of Britain's obligations to the international legal framework, and the Labour Party and the Tories as well. I don't think they really want to go there. That's why we never hear them talking about leaving the UN Refugee Convention. They'll say, the Tories will say, "Oh, we need to leave the ECHR," and I think that there's reasons that we could leave the ECHR, and maybe we should, but it's not the main player as far as legitimizing the people who are coming in over the channel. And what the ECHR will do is, if you are an asylum seeker, if your claim has been heard, if you've been running around with appeal after appeal, if you've been here for 5 or 6 years and you've run out of appeals and you've got to go home, you can make a case that you've got a right to a family life because you've been here long enough to actually establish a family and to establish a life in this country. And yes, it does apply to those people. And yes, it generally does stop those people leaving, but those people are a minority. They are very much the people who have been given us the runaround for years. The convention which legalizes what to us is illegal entry via the channel is the UN Refugee Convention, and that's the one that we need to overturn in some way and
However,
no longer deal with.
isn't it enshrined in British law that we have the right to refuse refugees if they've travelled through a safe country to get here?
No, no. I mean, some people make that argument that
I've
that's what
heard,
the UN Refugee Convention is about, but
I've,
those
I've heard,
those go ahead.
I've heard prominent MPs or former MPs like Jacob Rees-Mogg actually make that argument on GB News, saying they've gone through a safe country, they should be claiming asylum now. Now, I don't know where he's getting that from, because as a former MP, I'd expect him to know something about it. Now, either he's mistaken or he's trying to argue a point that's not been established in the
Um,
common law framework, basically. He may have a
yes,
point, but it's not been argued effectively.
exactly. It's both of those things. It's both those things. It's not an established point of law, and to the extent that you would take that to court, under the UN Refugee Convention, there's plenty of lawyers who say, "Oh no, that's a misinterpretation of the UN Refugee Convention, and we do actually have to continue to allow people even from a safe country." So yeah, that's just one of these legal pieces of legalese which will be argued over and over. You can take it to court, and it's very likely that the that you'll lose it as well, because the UN refugee lawyers will come up with all sorts of reasons why they had to be in that safe country, because it was the only country they could get to, and all sorts of things. It's just a piece of legalese which is not been tested, and it's not going to save us at all. The only thing that's going to save us is just getting out of that convention and
So
establishing our own version.
and I would say, I mean, from my understanding, there's no such thing as international law. What you have is a series of treaties and conventions, like the Refugee Convention, where essentially you have nation states, or we'll call them parties just for the sake of the argument. So, say for example, you've got 50 countries and they all agree to we're going to do it this way, i.e., the Refugee Convention. It's not actually binding anywhere, meaning we could leave tomorrow. I think we have to give a year's notice. I think there was a notice period to say, like, we're withdrawing from it. But it's not actually enforceable, because it's not, because international law is just a series of agreements. It's not actually a legislation.
That's also correct. That's also correct. But that convention can be socially binding on a country in such a way that the country feels that it can't really go and do its own thing when there's another 49 countries who are going to say you cannot do that.
So
It
essentially, it's worded as guidelines, but many people read it as rules rather than guidelines.
Yes, and it becomes accepted to such a point that it becomes like a commonly established international rule, even though it might not be enforceable in some way. It's just like Britain doesn't want to come out of the UN Refugee Convention, because then all the other countries would say, well, why can't we come out of it? And you'd find that that structure, which has been built up since 1951, will just start to disintegrate. And nobody wants to be the first person to say, this isn't working for us anymore. We need to go our own way. So you're right in the sense that it's not legally binding. You're right that we could leave it, but politically, it requires a lot of courage for a national leader to say, I am leading my country out of this convention that the
Well,
whole world agrees with.
well, just between me and you and your audience, Alistair, I would turn around and say straight away, it's not working for us because it's putting our women and children in danger. It's putting them at risk. If there's one serious crime that's a result of this refugee convention and somebody given or granted indefinite leave to remain on the back of a refugee convention, then that's too many.
Exactly.
That's my opinion on the matter, and that stems from what you said earlier in the segment, that the first priority of any government is to keep its people safe. So, to me, anything that contravenes that should be a secondary or tertiary consideration. Yes, they're nice to have. Okay. ECHR, nice to have. Wonderful. Great. Refugee Convention, nice to have. They're not essential to the running of a country. You should have them lower down the totem pole. It's like the European Convention on Human Rights. It should be for Europeans. It was specifically set up after World War II, after the Holocaust and other war crimes that happened during World War II. And it should be redefined so it's just specifically for Europeans.
Yes.
That would cause, I mean, that would cause all the people from Africa to stop crossing the Mediterranean into Europe, because the ECHR has been redefined as specifically for Europeans.
Yes. All
That
of
would be
these.
that would be one. tweak. But you notice no one ever mentions these tweaks that are very logical and very practical. You could put these measures in.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That would make a dent. It wouldn't stop the problem, but it would make a dent. If you redefine the ECHR for just Europeans,
Mm-hmm.
or you redefine it to say only people that are signed up to the ECHR as nation states
Mm-hmm.
can access the rights that come with it. For example, so you can't get refugees from Nigeria or South Africa anymore.
Yeah.
But considering what's happening in South Africa, we might want to take a few refugees from South Africa, like America is. But
Mm-hmm.
you get the principles that I'm making there. There's very specifics. I mean, they were defined in a way before we understood how they were going to be abused in the future. It's like anything, if any legislation or any law's not working, you either revise it or you repeal it.
Exactly. There's so much that could be done. There's so much that could be done, but there's just silence from people who should be guiding us. Paul raises the good point here about, you have to be checked for safeguarding if you're working in many jobs these days. You have to be checked and so on to protect the public. Like, yet we're letting people into the UK without any kind of safeguarding checks at all. And absolutely. Well, look, we're coming to the end of the show. It's been a good talk. We didn't get even much.
We didn't get to your former first mistress, the Portland Dwarf, did we?
We didn't even get onto that at all either. No.
Apparently, I'll just say a few things about Nicola Sturgeon before you go, then, to give you a bit of fodder. Then, I think it's ironic that the lady that wanted to lead Scotland from the oppressed English wants to relocate to London.
Yes.
Did she leave that chapter out of a book? Did she? Because she's mentioned that all over the press. For some reason, we're being subjected to her all over English television sets at the moment as well.
Oh, right. Sorry for that.
I think it's quite comical that her biggest achievement when she was in office was the baby box that nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That seems to be her claim to fame. But yeah, everything that's going on from Nicola Sturgeon this past week or so is just ridiculous. It's absolutely pathetic. She's an international laughingstock. She's a national disgrace, and you well shot of her.
Yes, yes. Well, hopefully she may enjoy her time in London. I think what she'll probably end up doing actually is you'll be seeing a lot more of her because she'll get a job as a political pundit on one of these shows. Or she might even be the new host of Question Time. Imagine that. That would be like another reason never to watch Question Time.
Well, yeah. With Nicola Sturgeon now, I really don't understand why people are plugging her so hard at the moment. I really don't get it. What I also found interesting before you get off basically and leave is that if you remember in the 2015 general election debates, for some reason, she was debating Nigel Farage and David Cameron on a national stage for the Westminster Parliament. What I don't understand is why she was allowed to do that, because she's got no power in Westminster. She's not an MP. She wasn't an MP. She wasn't running for election in the British Parliament. And yet she was able to debate national party leaders like Farage and David Cameron. I didn't understand that. And then you flip it forward 9 years to the 2024 general election. John Swinney wasn't debating with Farage and Rishi Sunak, was he? They sent Stephen Flynn in, so for some reason that changed.
Possibly it was just because the SNP didn't have any other talent that.
So what you're saying to me that Stephen Flynn's more impressive than John Swinney? Probably,
actually, yeah. Well, he's unfortunately likely to be the next leader of the SNP if John Swinney steps down. He's the favourite to become the next leader. Believe it or not.
God help you.
Exactly. Well, Damien, sorry. Thanks for coming along tonight anyway. And
yeah, not a problem.
You do a regular show. You're putting out videos every day on your YouTube site, which is at youtube.com/at Cheshire Cat Musings, all one word. And I definitely do recommend it as a channel for some regular common sense.
I have started reading the book. I've not got through it because it is quite thick. However, I have started reading through it, and it's an interesting read. I've skimmed it, but I will be cracking the knuckles on it soon enough, so I will be going through it in more detail.
Brilliant. And something about it is that you can just dip into it because the chapter headings are fairly clear. So if you want to find out about the UN Refugee Convention, or how to stop the boats, or how to stop legal immigration, or how to do deportation, or why do so many people who are not British citizens, why do they have the vote, which is a major issue in Britain, actually, then it's all there, and Protect Our Country. So, Damien, we'll have you on, as we suggested. You've got to come on once a month anyway. And so we look forward to having you back on. But in the meantime, have a great evening and a great week down there in Runcorn.
Not
All
a
the best to
problem.
you.
You have a good evening as well, and let's keep our countries together. But thanks for your time, yeah?
Absolutely. Good night.
Bye-bye.